Okay, here I am cruising through downtown LaSalle. Now, believe it or not, LaSalle used to be a really thriving metropolis at one time. Like back in the 20s and the 30s, probably not so much, after the Great Depression, but it kind of survived that because going into the 40s, it was still quite a mecca as well. And LaSalle was one of the places that the Chicago gangsters would come down to and hide out. This was one of those gangster towns. There was a lot of speakeasies and there was a lot of entertainment and jazz music. I'm talking about the 1920s. And it was a crazy river town. Now, I used to come to LaSalle and come downtown to the downtown that I'm cruising through right now. And I would go to meetings for the Chicago Sun-Times. I worked with the Chicago Sun-Times and the Chicago Tribune, both the Chicago papers at one time or another, and actually both at the same time, as well as the New York Times, the Quad City Times, and the Cedar Rapids Gazette, and all these other newspapers that I've worked for and worked with in my newspaper career. And even back then, back in the 80s, LaSalle was quite a city. I mean, the remnants of its greatness still existed. But right now it's just a lot of old broken down architecture. There's an old newspaper here, the LaSalle Tribune, and it's still in business, and it's just right down the street here. And it's in a broken down old building. Most of the old newspapers are broken down old buildings, or they've just disappeared, or they've been torn down, like in Torrance, California. I worked for the Torrance Daily Breeze, which is my favorite name for a newspaper, the Daily Breeze. You gotta love that. So I worked for the Torrance Daily Breeze back around 2004, 2005. And it was a really cool newspaper. And it was one of these old newspaper buildings, and they had the big press and everything. That was built back in probably the late 50s or early 60s. And it had outdoor entrances to the offices because it was in Southern California, open air, outside, courtyard and that kind of stuff. And really cool foyer, that you go into, for the front desk and stuff. It was one of these awesome, awesome Southern California newspapers. Well, a lot of those newspaper buildings, they're broken down, they're getting torn down. Torrance Daily Breeze was torn down, actually, and Torrance Daily Breeze is, got an office in some strip mall somewhere, in the mall in Torrance. It's kind of sad. But anyway, that's what's happening to newspapers all over the country. I work for the Democrat down in Tallahassee, the Tallahassee Democrat in Florida, and same story. And, and the Moline Dispatch, I never thought the Moline Dispatch would just up and disappear and get sucked into the Quad City Times of all papers. But and then there's the Colorado papers, the history out there. I won't even get into it. It's just crazy. So anyway, LaSalle, cool little town, and that's where I'm working today. And I'm going to go over to Ottawa, and I'm going to get some stuff done there too.